How's it going, Fish fam? Welcome back to a brand new video. If this is your first time checking out the channel, what's up? My name is Gabe. I also go by SpartnFish pretty much everywhere on the internet since like 2012. I am also going to be reacting to My Hero and Demon Slayer this season as they're airing. It just didn't really work scheduling wise for me this week. The new season is coming out this weekend. Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town most of the weekend, so I'm not going to be able to film my reaction and really get that up in time. So what I did want to do is at least put out this video talking a little bit about some of my favorite moments throughout My Hero up to this point in the anime so far. I have read a little bit of the manga past where the anime is currently, but I'm mostly just going to be talking about the anime for the purposes of, you know, what's coming out this week. I did want to give a quick shout out to you guys who do support me. So quick shout out to Golden Zebra. You're always there consistently. You've been a subscriber for a while, and I'm pretty sure you're one of like the most consistent One Piece React channel watchers of all time. So appreciate you. Thanks for stopping by. But with all that being said, let's just get into it. The way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to kind of go through like one or two highlights from each of the seasons that we've had so far, and just sort of expand on them a little bit and why I felt like they made, you know, such an impact on me and such an impact on the series as a whole. So obviously one of the first big moments of the show comes to us in episode 1. And that's going to be when Deku's body moves on its own. Bakugo captured by the slime villain that we meet very early on in the series. And then, while all the heroes are sort of standing around waiting just because they're like, well, you know, my quirk doesn't really work too well against this type of guy. I don't know. Meanwhile, there is a 12-year-old who's just in the crowd watching his friend be kidnapped and having his body like possessed by this slime monster. He's like, fuck all that, I'm going, and it just takes off, does his like utmost to try and help save Bakugo. And it's sort of this like initial character introduction that really makes us as the audience realize, you know, despite the fact that this kid has no abilities, still like has the capacity to be a hero and still has the intention of being a hero regardless of any of those setbacks. Now, sort of jumping ahead a little bit, and we have our first introduction to Eraserhead, or Isawa, and one of the things that he's having everyone do is really get a sense for where they stand initially. And as we're going through these tests, we're seeing that everyone is, for the most part, substantially more equipped to like do hero work than Deku is. And Aizawa notices this, calls him out on it, and basically stops him from using his ability because he knows that he's going to injure himself in doing so. You can't save anyone, you end up needing to be saved. If that's the case, if that's what happens every time you use your quirk, you're not cut out for this, because you're just going to end up causing more problems for everyone else and the, you know, other heroes who are trying to do work around you. That's sort of a catalyst for a lot of what combat looks like for Deku moving forward throughout the series. He turns to Aizawa and he's able to say, look, I can still stand. I'm gonna jump forward a little bit to our fight with the League of Villains at USJ. So skipping forward to the USJ fight, we have All Might versus the Nomu, and we finally get to see like what it actually looks like for All Might to push himself to his limit. You know, we've been introduced to these foes that are essentially an amalgamation of a bunch of different abilities that have really just been genetically engineered for the sole purpose of killing All Might, bringing down the heroes, and, you know, sort of just dismantling society as a whole as, you know, it's known in this world. But because of that, it gives us a great opportunity, and not just us as the audience, but like us as in the students, to see like a hero going full all out and what that really looks like in the context of these new foes that we're going to be fighting, and just send the Nomu packing. And I feel like that's such it's an interesting baseline for what the fights look like later on in the show, right? So, moving on to Season 2. Obviously, it's a lot longer than Season 1. I mean, from here on out, all the seasons are going to be like 20 episodes plus. So, the first major sort of fight that I do want to talk about is Bakugo versus Uraraka. It's not a fight that necessarily gets like touted as much throughout the fandom, but for me, it felt like a really impactful moment because we have Bakugo, who arguably throughout the series is someone that a lot of people throughout like Season 1 and early Season 2 didn't really like take seriously. They just like didn't take him seriously as a person. For a lot of people who, you know, if Season 1 was their initial introduction to My Hero, for a lot of those people it was like, does this kid like even want to be here? Like, why is this kid like participating in this program? But then, you know, we skip forward to this fight and we see how methodical he is about things. We see, you know, how much he thinks throughout the fights. We see how seriously he takes everything. Even someone like Uraraka, who, you know, previously throughout the show he might have looked down upon, when it's, you know, him face to face, he's not letting his guard down around her, whereas, you know, the people in the crowd clearly don't understand what the hell's going on. They're like, oh, this kid's toying with her, when in the reality he respects her abilities because, you know, he's been alongside her this whole time. He understands what she can do, so he's just trying to keep his distance as best he can, because the second she touches him, he fucking loses the fight. And then obviously, one of the biggest fights throughout this whole tournament arc, one of the ones that people were looking forward to the most, is going to be Deku versus Todoroki. Now, when these two squared up with each other, I don't really think any of us knew what to expect. I think pretty much everyone in the fandom kind of expected Todoroki to win, and, you know, no real surprises there. But I think a large part of the reason why Todoroki won, and I think it's pretty obvious in, you know, watching the show that this is the case, he won because Deku kind of allowed him to, more or less. Deku saw a friend who needed help, and he spent the entirety of that fight trying to push his friend to be his best possible self. Obviously, yeah, there's like a part of it that goes into it where it's, you know, him trying to earn Todoroki's respect to a certain degree, because everyone else is out here giving it their all, they're trying their best, and you're just gonna half-ass it and not show us the same level of respect that we're showing you. And I just felt like that one fight is sort of the catalyst that sets up so much of the growth that we see from Todoroki as the show continues. Dabi and Twice are probably most people's favorite villains, but I feel like Stain is definitely up there for a lot of people. If he's not your favorite, he's probably in your top 3, I'm assuming. He serves one really important purpose. He really makes us as the audience and the heroes kind of question their own morality in a sense. It's like, from, you know, his own warped perspective, the way he sees it is the only real hero is All Might, because he's this enduring symbol in Stain's eyes, right? This villain who idolizes the world's greatest hero and is trying to get rid of what he considers to be like the fakes, he emerges at the end of this fight as sort of the most moral person in the situation, where Stain, while hands behind his back after he's been completely fucking dusted by a bunch of heroes, he goes out of his way to be able to kill the Nomu. He paralyzes it mid-flight, saves Deku, and then he gives his whole monologue speech that ends up inspiring an entire generation of people. So, moving on to season 3 of My Hero Academia. Obviously, this is a huge season for a lot of reasons. Sort of everything we've been building up for the previous 2 seasons comes to fruition, and that's kind of the way My Hero Academia works. It's a very like cyclical shonen anime almost, where there's a couple seasons of like consistently building, and then we get to like this almost apex moment where everything sort of comes to fruition and we're like, oh shit, this is what we've been waiting for. This is fucking crazy. And sort of the first instance we get to see of that in season 3 is going to be when Deku beats Muscular. This is such a cool fight for so many reasons. Obviously, one of the big ones is their abilities are so similar. Muscular's main ability, obviously, is becoming muscular. Dude becomes Sam Sulik. He has Death Star delts like fucking Derek from More Plates, More Dates. And throughout this whole fight, Deku is simultaneously protecting Koda. While he's, battling Muscular, pushing himself, to be honest, way past any limits that he should be going past, manages to break both of his fucking arms during this fight, and still saves Koda using just his goddamn teeth. This is sort of the, inverse of what we saw with Stain in Season 2, where we see, Deku now is inspiring the new generation of heroes, something that, All Might did for him and has done for countless other people like Bakugo. Now, fast forwarding a little bit through some of the other, and I truly mean this, fucking amazing moments in season 3. If I could right now, I would do a whole video just on season 3. I would love to do that, but for the sake of time, we have season 8 coming out in 4 days, so I'm kind of trying to make sure I'm getting as much done as I can in a short amount of time. My next sort of favorite moment in season 3 is actually when Bakugo gets kidnapped. Just because, throughout this whole process, we've seen the two of them constantly fucking at odds, right? This is the first time where he's really had the chance to show Bakugo that he's on the same playing field. They've, grown up, they grew up together, but they grew up in completely different directions, and Deku definitely, was constantly second fiddle to Bakugo to a certain extent. But this was his first real test of, okay, am I finally worthy of being, on the same playing field as, my rival Bakugo? And the answer in that moment was no. We see Dabi, wrap his hands around Bakugo's throat and just pull him into the teleportation, basically. And just the last thing Bakugo says to Deku is... And in that moment, Deku just comes to terms with his own, failures as a friend, failures as a hero, his inability to really understand and utilize his quirk effectively. And we also see one of the most human moments from Bakugo that we'll get for quite a while. This is sort of the start of his growth in a lot of people's eyes, where he's just, in that moment, he's obviously, concerned with his own well-being, but more so, he's still in a hero mindset. It's the first time where we really see him embody what it means to be a hero and sort of put himself on the back burner and prioritize other people. All Might versus All for One. A couple of really important moments take place here. The first of which, and almost least important in this instance, is the actual fight itself. Periodically throughout this fight, constantly on the back foot, right? All Might is constantly on the back foot, right? Characters who are introduced to us, like All Might, it's a sure thing in most cases. But this was one of the instances where, you know, that not being true and being really unsure, it really made the fight that much more impactful, right? There are a lot of moments where it seems like he's definitely going to lose, and this is going to be it for him, and we're gonna, you know, pick up from this point forward. Just with Deku, does become apparent throughout this fight is how big of an impact the heroes have on other people. Not just obviously protecting their like physical well-being, but like their emotional well-being is so dependent on people like All Might, who they see as these like symbols and these pillars of peace in the community. And we get this really, really fucking beautiful like moment in the anime, and going along with it, an amazing panel going full like muscle form for like one more TV appearance, and basically just, you know, Gran Torino really said it best, like, no, leave him alone, he's still working. All of the sort of bystanders just worldwide who are watching this happen on TV, like the symbol of hope, the symbol of peace, point directly to the camera and just say,
次は君だ.
That shit broke me. When I tell you that I cried watching these little superhero comic book characters in anime, just openly weeping, breaking down. You know, we had this sort of duality where everyone was like, damn, he's saying he's gonna be able to beat the shit out of any villains who come up, and like it's a huge sigh of relief for everyone across the planet. Meanwhile, Deku just feels the weight of the entire world just come crashing onto his shoulders with just that one sentence. All right, I really, 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 really like the exam arc in One Piece as One Piece. Holy shit. Check out my One Piece reaction. But like I mentioned before, I'm trying to condense this video down a little bit, so I can't be yapping all day. We get some fucking banger fights in season 4. The first sort of peak moment for me as far as season 4 goes is Fat Gum and Red Riot versus Rappa and Tengai. That's just such a sick moment in the series. I really, really fucking resonated with Red Riot's character of just being someone who, you know, wishes that he could be the type of person who is a hero. He wants so badly and feels so strongly that he should be someone who is like emotionally able to defend other people, but he's scared of doing it. And I think this is one of the reasons why people who are like such big fans of One Piece do like really grow to be such why they grow to be such like passionate fans of Usopp. This one scene with Red Riot does such a great job of like encapsulating like that development as a person, and that becomes someone that, you know, the you of the last year would be super proud to see now. Season 4 has one of the most heartbreaking fights in the series. We've grown to sort of love this character, Lemillion, since his introduction to us, introduction to Deku and the rest of Class 1A. He's like a perfect example to Deku of, you know, someone who, like Deku, has a quirk that is incredibly hard to like master and control, and, you know, can be super hard on his body. You know, he's the whole time that Lemillion is using his ability, he's, you know, blind, he's deaf, he has no sense of feeling, he's just in a black void. And it's like to hear him describe it, it's like the most mentally taxing ability to be able to use, but he has, you know, mastered that ability through just like sheer force of will and hard work. but in an instant, he just has all of the hard work of the past like decade of his life is just shattered. It's gone. He just has, you know, Overhaul just through his planning and, you know, developing this weapon has been able to take all of that away from him. It's really one of like the most heartbreaking scenes in the whole show, but in season 4 particularly, it really sticks out. Last thing I wanted to touch on from season 4, obviously I wanted to bring up, you know, Deku going Super Saiyan Blue. That is not something that I had on my bingo card for that year, but just seeing like the capability of what he can do with just this one aspect of his quirk, if he were to fully realize and master that potential. Now in, you know, season 6, season 7, we've seen, you know, him gain countless, not countless, 7, but we've seen him gain other 8? How? Yes, 8. We've seen him gain 8 other abilities, because he's the knight, yeah. 8 other abilities, pretty consistently and pretty flawlessly to a certain degree. He's able to, like, you know, manipulate them and use them together in a really effective way. But at this point in the story, we're like, okay, well, this is going to be, like, our end goal, right? This is what we're going to eventually achieve. To see in season 4 what we're expecting the end standard of who Deku will become. Overhaul has become like this massive kaiju beast that's overtaking this whole city, but it's just Deku's just picking up the Sunday paper. Like, that's all it is for him. I know I kind of mentioned this earlier on, but My Hero tends to be kind of cyclical, and season 5 is kind of a down point for a lot of people in the show. It's, you know, a lot of it is like setting the table for what's to come. We get to see like how our hero students have developed. We get to see, you know, how the League of Villains have developed and, you know, what's sort of going on with them. But there are still a lot of like really cool moments in season 5. One thing that is really cool is during the fights between Class A and Class B, we get to see that Bakugo has, you know, had a bit more development. He's grown even more as a person, more as a character. He's finally starting to realize he doesn't have to do everything on his own. You know, he doesn't need to be just one person. And I feel like a large part of that is his relationship with Deku and sort of how he and Deku have grown closer to All Might over the, you know, past year or so. During Bakugo's group fight with Class B, we see him take on more of a leadership role. Traditionally, what we would have expected Bakugo to do is just jump in head first, start blasting all over the place, and trying to just do his best to take everyone out of the fight. But instead, what we see here is him communicating effectively with everyone, understanding their abilities, and trying to use them in the best way possible to make sure that they come out on top, which they do. Cut forward a little bit, and we are having dinner with the Todoroki family. This is not the most awkward family dinner I've ever seen in anime. We get to see that Shoto is at least putting an effort to like reconnect with his family. Like, his whole essence as a character could have pretty much just been summed up by like a fuck my dad. Like, at least at this point in time, kind of culminates here, where he's trying to encourage, you know, his siblings and his father to have dinner with each other. His older brother is actually the one who is kind of like, you know what, I can't do this. When of the siblings that are in that room, at least, Todoroki has the biggest reason to like be upset with his parents, right? It's kind of crazy to me that somebody besides Shoto feels like validated enough in that situation to be as offended as they are when Shoto is the one that's like trying to make this relationship work. Endeavor is also trying to come to terms with his shortcomings and his failures as a father, and he's trying to make amends for years of trauma that he basically put his kids through. But the time period that he came up in, how quickly the world has changed in these past few like decades even, everything has kind of changed at a rapid pace, and I think, you know, he's starting to realize, you know, I fucked up and I need to start taking responsibility for that, and this is sort of the first step that he sees to doing that. And that finally brings us to season 6 of My Hero Academia. This is honestly one of the craziest seasons like a modern shonen has had in a minute, at least from my perspective. You know, you guys can debate down in the comments about, like, you know, recent episodes of Black Clover, you know, Demon Slayer, stuff like that, but in my opinion, like, season 6 of My Hero was just like absolutely fucking off the walls. Constant conflict throughout the entire show, and to me, as far as like a shonen goes, like, that's exactly what you're looking for, right? One of the big ones is for sure Twice's death. Not the first moment throughout the series, but it's one of the biggest moments where we see the villains really be able to like sway public opinion. They bring him down a lot throughout this season, but one of the big ones is definitely Twice's death, just because he is a character that like so many people feel so like passionately attached to. Despite the fact that he is a villain, it kind of hits with the same like gravitas as, you know, that moment from earlier on with Stain, where it's like, shit, like, this is where we're at in this story now. Like, you know, no one is really safe from this point on. Throughout season 6, we pretty much constantly have characters dying that we've known throughout the entire course of this series. There are some characters who physically die, and then we have some characters who like emotionally die. And Twice's death is really one of like the first catalysts that sort of sets a lot of those things in motion. Now, one thing I did want to touch on, there were a lot of people who were just watching the show who somehow, some way, they never like theorized that Dabi was Endeavor's son.
What?
I feel like for me, the first time I met him, I was like, this seems odd. But for a lot of people who are watching, and that was their first experience, this came as like a huge shock, a huge reveal to them in the previous 2 seasons, and doing our best to kind of like repair and build back those bridges that had been broken over like decades of constant like abuse and neglect from Endeavor to his children, that this comes as like such an insanely emotional blow. It's gonna be interesting going into next season, seeing how like those sort of emotional wounds have permeated and what that sort of looks like in terms of, can we ever repair some of those relationships? The very last thing I wanted to talk about in season 6 is actually kind of like 3 things combined. I know this video is already super long. Forgive me for yapping, but I'm gonna yap. I am the mayor of Yapville. It is what I do. I'm going to speak Japanese to you, so just bear with me for a minute. One of the things I wanted to talk about before I end this video is going to be Deku versus Class A. The previous couple of episodes before we get this fight, we have this version of Deku who's just an absolute demon running around the city and just demolishing people piece by piece. But then we get to see like sort of the inner emotional turmoil that's going on underneath that hood, and Deku is more or less just completely broken inside, completely separate from everyone else, because in his mind that's, you know, the safest way of doing things. I talked about Todoroki and Bakugo, where they're, you know, very self-reliant, you know, don't need anybody else, they don't need friends, they kind of push everyone else away. And that's what Deku is doing at the end of season 6. The 2 of them, along with everyone else, drag him back. we get to see them like snap him back into reality, and a big part of that, the two of them talking about, you know, it's not weakness to need other people, it's human, and it's, you know, friends are there for each other, you can rely on us. It's sort of the culmination of all of these human moments that have been like stacking up on top of each other, compiling interest. You know, Bakugo fully breaking down in a previous season, saying, you know, I'm the reason there's no All Might. Nobody talks about it, but everyone knows that I'm the reason that All Might's gone now. And we see him, you know, get to a precipice where he finally apologizes to Deku for, you know, everything that's happened thus far, and, you know, and then the culmination of sort of this whole overarching fight and war to kind of bring Deku back home, Uraraka giving honestly one of like the best speeches like given by a female character in anime, that gets her megaphone, stands up on her pedestal, and screams at all of these civilians, just, what the fuck is wrong with you people? That is a 13-year-old kid who has been out in the fucking war zone, risking life and limb to protect all of you. I'm gonna fucking cry thinking about this. Just seeing, like, piece by piece, all of these people that he's helped remember the things that he's done for them, and kind of just like break down, just realize like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, if we don't do this, how are we, you know, any better than the people outside our walls who are trying to like take down society and kill all of us? Obviously, there is a ton to talk about in My Hero. I know I mentioned throughout this video that I could definitely make, you know, 6 of these videos this same length, just talking about each of the individual seasons. My Hero comes out this week. So let me know down in the comments what moments I missed that you guys really, really fucking loved from My Hero. Are you excited for the new season coming out? And if you want to get a shout out in the next video, make sure you leave a comment letting me know that Deku cried a lot in season 1 of My Hero, because I didn't know that. Who knew? We're gonna adjust our reaction schedule a little bit to accommodate for My Hero and Demon Slayer. I'm gonna be a little bit delayed in general, just because actually at the end of this month I'm going on a trip with a bunch of my friends for a couple of weeks. One Piece is still gonna be coming out like normal, and I'm gonna try my best to have other content ready for you guys, so that'll be coming out while I'm gone. But in the meantime, the most recent episodes of My Hero and of Demon Slayer are going to be a little bit delayed. So let me know if you guys like content like this, and I'll go ahead and make something similar for Demon Slayer. With all that being said, don't forget to hit the subscription button down below. Make sure you tap the notification bell so you get notified the next time we post a reaction video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. What? Hello? What?